Hey there, kings and queens. Welcome again to another episode of Faith Helps Podcast. And we are here at the end of February, the lovey-dovey month that we acknowledged, starting with February the 1st, where we kicked off this season with discussing how do we navigate all things love and relationships, but particularly focusing on this theme of dying to self, right? So humbling ourselves, being mindful of our selfishness, and how we can be more mindful of others' experience and needs as opposed to just our own. And so we ended last week. If you did not tune in, we had a very special guest, Dr. Shatima Aycock, as she is going to be forever recognized in my head, as she is graduating alongside me this year. So celebrating that. But also, she dropped so many gems and so much wisdom for us in that episode. It was such a blessing. If you didn't get a chance to check in and listen to that episode, what are you waiting for? You are playing yourself if you don't go listen now. Stop this episode and go listen to it. And the reason why, it's not just because it was such an amazing episode and there were so many different gems that she dropped. You got to hear how her and I have navigated some of our own challenges in our friendship and how we were able to overcome them. You got to hear different perspectives on what to look for as a red flag or a green flag in a friendship, and how do you navigate those when you see them coming up. And then I left off with her. I asked her this question that I want to bring back to the front right now. And that question I asked her at the end of that episode was, how do we overcome? What feedback would she give someone who is dealing with overcoming pain or betrayal, hurts, disappointment, things of that nature in their relationship with their friend? And she gave a very honest and transparent answer. She acknowledged why that would be difficult, because it is a hard thing to do. And I appreciated that so much, because a lot of times we don't acknowledge the hard things. We talk about love and the excitement of, Valentine's Day and the gift giving and all of that. But sometimes we forget to acknowledge the reality of love as well. And that reality is that sometimes love and relationships, while they can bring amazing things, they can also sometimes bring some not so amazing things, like trauma, pain, hurts, disappointment, disloyalty, betrayal. All of those things are a reality. And as we left off last week with that question, I wanted to pick up there, because this month was a focus on love in all things relationship-wise, right? We talked about romantic relationships, dating, and then we also talked about friendships. We started this month with the concept of dying to self. That was the first episode of February, was how we humble ourselves and how we remain mindful of our own selfishness. And I kind of pressed on the fact that we live in a culture and generation where people tend to be more selfish and inconsiderate of others, and loving themselves to the point that they have no regard for anyone else. And it becomes toxic self-love. And I feel that we needed to start there, because sometimes we need that gut check to kind of humble ourselves and practice how we can show love more than trying to receive it. But I also want to acknowledge, as we're closing this month, and I saved this for last because I think that it can be a very sobering reality to kind of take a moment and acknowledge that love hasn't always been good to us. Relationships have not always treated us well. And sometimes we don't even know how to love or do relationships. Sometimes we don't even want to, because of the things that have happened in our lives that have caused so much turmoil, so much distress, things that we're still trying to work through and heal from and overcome. I would be a fool to expect you guys to be able to love and be loving and do relationships in a healthy manner when there are so many things that you haven't overcome yourself. I feel that's equally important to also have a real and honest conversation now about those times when love and the people in our lives who were supposed to show it have not been mindful and considerate or compassionate towards us. Those times when people who were supposed to show us love and be love in our lives, they were the exact opposite, or they fell short in some way that left us broken or hurt or confused. It's important to have this conversation just as much as the other conversations, because we cannot love and do relationships in a healthy way if we haven't healed from the pain, the hurt, the trauma, the betrayal, the disappointment that love and relationships have caused us in our lives. Now, I know in the past, I've been known for starting these conversations with defining things. You guys know that I love dissecting the meaning of things and going deeper. And in this discussion, I'm actually not going to do that. I'm not going to travel down the rabbit holes of defining or labeling trauma and pain and betrayal and hurt. I don't want to do that because I found that to be very unhelpful and very counterproductive for many people. Though sometimes it can be helpful, don't get me wrong, to be able to categorize, label, and define a thing and call a thing. I've also seen that sometimes people get caught up in the definitions and descriptions to the point that they use it to disqualify, invalidate, or compare their experiences. And I don't want you guys to do that. I don't want this conversation to be this comparison of whether or not this is betrayal. Maybe I'm overlooking it, or maybe I'm mislabeling it, or is this really trauma, or do I deserve to call this trauma because what someone else went through was worse? No, we're not doing that. I want you to be honest about what you feel. It's more important in this present moment to not get tangled up in the weeds of defining what it is or labeling it. It's more important to focus on how it made you feel. Validate that experience. Focus on the feelings that come up. Focus on how it's impacting your daily functioning. If it's something that comes up in every relationship you've tried to encounter, then yes, it is something that needs to be healed. So, as we go through this conversation, I don't want you to get caught up in the confusion and in the logistics and language of if this is betrayal, if it's not betrayal. Am I overreacting? Am I not overreacting? Is this trauma? Is it not as trauma? Is it as bad or is it not as bad? Don't worry about that. Focus on the healing. All that other stuff is noise. It's a distraction. And it's going to distract you from actually doing the things that are going to pour into you and help you get to a healed version of yourself that you need. So with that being said, let us focus on healing love. You know, a question I get asked quite a lot in therapy is a client will come in and say, how do I heal? How do I heal from this trauma? How do I heal from this betrayal? How do I heal from this pain? Or how do I heal from this hurt? They ask, how do I heal? How? How do I do it? How do I go about it? What are the steps? And my answer is I don't know. People tend not to like that response because they're coming into therapy because they think and they expect for the therapist to be able to tell them how to heal. They want someone to help them figure it out and how to do it. And the reason I say I don't know is because they are the expert of themselves. That's something I tell everyone I work with. In therapy, it's not about you coming in to get a step-by-step plan on how to heal. It's actually more about the experience and the process of it, not getting to a finish line of anything. Because in reality, when it comes to healing, there may not be a finish line. Maybe it's something that throughout your life you continue to heal and overcome, and maybe the weight of it gets a little easier, and maybe the triggers become a little easier to manage. But stop focusing on a finish line. Stop focusing on the hooray, I've arrived, I'm healed. No, maybe you're focusing on I'm better. I'm better than I was last week. I'm better than I was last year. I'm feeling better than I was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Maybe you don't feel better, but maybe you feel like you're managing things in a more productive way. Maybe your functioning is starting to improve. Maybe you're being able to eat and sleep more regularly. Focus on those things. When it comes to healing and that question of how you do it, it all depends on you. It depends on what you need. It depends on how you respond to things. It depends on what works best for you. It depends on your situation. It depends on what happened. It also depends on your willingness to invest in your own process. In the military, they call it being a part of your own rescue. That is a huge part of therapy, is how do you take the steps necessary to be a part of your own healing. You may not feel like you have the answers, but you do. They're in there. And the therapists, we're just here to help you uncover it. We're here to be a support or a comfort, a coach, so to speak. Sometimes we're just there to be a listening ear or a sounding board. Sometimes we're there to give strategies and steps. But that's not the whole picture. Now, with that being said, just for you to kind of adjust your expectations a bit and to also kind of take a moment to rest in the fact that maybe it's not about like getting to this healed version, but more importantly, the process of your healing. Now, for the purposes of this discussion, I don't want you to focus on healing or steps, but I do want to offer you just ideas on ways to heal, because that's what therapy is. It's basically an exploration of ideas. Some things work for you, some things don't. What works for someone else might not work for you. So in this conversation, I want us to take a little bit of a dive down these different aspects of healing, what it can look like, what it can mean, things you can consider. And it's up to you to decide what applies and what doesn't apply for you, if that's okay. All right? The first thing I like to encourage people who are on their healing journey to do is assess your basic needs. It's really hard to focus on healing or overcoming some type of hurt, pain, or trauma, whatever it might be, if your basic needs are not being met. What I mean by that is, are you eating? Do you have shelter? Do you sleep well? Are you sleeping at all? Do you feel safe where you are? It's really difficult to work on healing from a situation that didn't make you feel safe if you're currently still living in an environment and a space that doesn't feel safe. So that first step is meeting those basic needs. Maybe that requires you to reach out to family or a safe person, a friend, a church, a mentor, or maybe you need a bit more skilled expertise to help you with that. Going to a social worker, going to a therapist, going to the police. Whatever level of escalation you need, making steps into that. I won't get tangled up right now in what all that might mean. But what I want you to take from that is acknowledging that first, check on your basic needs. Check on your safety, check on your shelter, like assess those things. Have those things laid out before you start worrying about the work of the trauma and the pain and the hurt and the betrayal. Making sure you're eating and you're sleeping. Making sure your health is addressed or being addressed. Whether that's dealing with doctor's visits. Whatever that is, address those first. The second part, which can sometimes go hand in hand, is acknowledgement of the pain. Whenever we're focusing on healing from these very painful experiences with love and relationships, you first got to acknowledge that it hurt you, that it was painful, that it was traumatic, that it felt disappointing, or that it felt like betrayal. You have to call it what it is. Call it hurtful. Call it enraging. Call it whatever fills in that blank for you. Acknowledge it. And after you acknowledge it, validate it. The reason why I didn't get all caught up in definitions is because sometimes we use that to invalidate. And that's not what's going to be helpful for your healing journey. What you actually need to do is just validate your experience. Acknowledge what it made you feel, how it impacted your functioning, how it impacted your daily living, how it is impacting you now and today. Validate that. After you validate it, express it. So many times we go throughout life with just stuffing things down and bottling it up, and then we wait until it's all bottled up to then explode, because at a point you can no longer stuff anymore. You cannot stuff it down or hold it in anymore. It eventually erupts, and you don't want it to erupt when you're at work, when you're with your family, or blowing it up on the wrong people, the people who have showed you healthy love. And a lot of times that happens in relationships. Spouses blow up on each other because something has triggered them and reminded them of a situation where they didn't feel heard, validated, or safe. And so then they express that because they stuffed it and never healed, and they throw that at their new partner, assuming they're healthy person. And it's displaced anger, it's displaced pain, and displaced emotion that they never got a chance to allow themselves to express. And expressing can look differently for different people. Maybe your version of expression looks like art. Maybe you express yourself through music or painting. Maybe you express yourself through talking it out, and you have to just vent and let it all out and say how it made you feel. And say what it made you think about yourself or others or the world around you. Maybe expression looks like physically being active and doing something. Some people go to this gym. Some people go to a rage room, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Where you get to break things in a space where it's allowed and you don't have to pay for it. Well, technically you pay for the ticket, but that's neither here nor there. It's a space where you can really release and express yourself. Finding a place where you can release and express yourself, even if that's just going to your room, shutting the door, and punching a pillow, or screaming into the pillow, or stomping your feet, or maybe you need to just sit and cry and weep. Allow yourself to let the emotion out. Part of healing, obviously, I'm gonna bring this one up, can look like therapy. It can be therapy, doesn't always have to. But therapy can be healing because it gives you a space with someone who's unbiased, someone who's able to be completely clear-minded and be someone on the outside looking in, as opposed to someone who's in the situation. It might give you skewed or biased feedback. When it comes to that, First, I like to remind people, when it comes to even considering therapy, think of your therapist as a shoe. Not every shoe is always going to fit. If you get a pair of shoes and you get home and you realize they actually don't fit as well as you thought, you take back the shoes. You don't keep them and keep lingering in them and walking in them feeling pain and discomfort. Yes, therapy can be painful and uncomfortable, but if the therapist is making you feel invalidated, unsafe, and you don't feel heard, you don't feel comfortable, then maybe that's a sign that you need to switch out and try someone different. It depends on what works for you. Maybe there are certain cultural factors or stylistic preferences you have for a type of therapist that would make you feel safe and heard. Maybe you feel more comfortable working with a male therapist versus a female therapist. Asking yourself these questions and knowing that it's okay to have those preferences. And also, something that can be a little bit more difficult to flesh out is the type of therapy that works for you. I worked with clients who wanted very structured therapy like CBT, which stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. And then I've worked with some clients who preferred less structured and they liked more emotion-based therapy that focused on the present moment of what they were feeling, and there was flexibility allowed for them to kind of explore and ponder and dissect some of their emotions and how they are experiencing them and how they feel in the room with the therapist. The most important part with therapy is being consistent, though. Once you've sorted out the therapist and you've communicated what you need or feel would be beneficial to you in therapy, be consistent. That's your role. Keep showing up. Even when painful memories are coming up or you feel uncomfortable and you're starting not to like having to unpack those difficult emotions, stick with it. Be consistent, because that is where the healing actually happens, is with confronting honestly what you're feeling, unpacking those painful memories. Don't abort the process. Give yourself time to work through it. That's where the healing can happen. Sometimes it can go hand in hand with therapy to incorporate movement. I often recommend exercise in addition to therapy. Exercise is actually one of the most helpful things people can do and most healing things people can do when they're battling things like anxiety and depression, both which can be triggered or worsened by the pain, trauma, betrayal, disappointment, and hurt that we experience from love and relationships. Get a workout plan. You don't have to go to the gym if you don't want to. I recognize that's not for everybody, and that's absolutely okay. YouTube University can be your friend. There are so many visual aids through YouTube, or even just background music and steps that you can find on different types of whole host and variety of exercises you can try. Find one that works for you and get to it. Whether it's 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, maybe 30 minutes every other day. The point, again, is to be consistent, and that's how it's beneficial. Exercise has been shown, even through science, the biological effects that it can have on relieving and alleviating stress. So giving yourself that opportunity to move, maybe instead of exercise, you want to do yoga. Whatever it is, try it out. Maybe start off small. Maybe start off with doing it with a friend, walking, or taking a hike here and there. But get moving, have movement incorporated in your healing process. And now comes the part that can sometimes be the most difficult. Healing requires us to have some courageous conversations. Those courageous conversations can look like directly confronting the person that caused the hurt, the pain, the disappointment, the betrayal. Confronting and having a courageous conversation with the person who was an assailant or perpetrator or abuser. That's something that I would not advise you to do without first having some form of therapy and having a strong, healthy, safe, and secure support system that can walk with you through it, as well as helping you prepare for it. Now, maybe having that direct conversation isn't available to you. Alternatively, I like to recommend what's called the do not send letter. A do not send letter is something that people use whether the person is available or not, or maybe you don't feel, if they are available, you don't feel safe enough to have that conversation, or maybe it's literally not going to be safe for you to have that courageous conversation. That's okay. This is about you getting off with your chest what you want to say, what you feel, how they wronged you, how it hurt you, how it impacted you, and how it's still impacting you. In a do not send letter, you write down everything that you would tell that person without any filter. You let it go. You release every feeling, every statement, every thought that you would want to say, and you write it down. I encourage people after doing this activity and during this activity, give yourself breaks if you need it. Maybe you need to write a few letters. But most importantly, give yourself space to decompress after, to do something that feels restorative and healing and comforting afterwards, whether that's going for a walk and getting out of that physical space, the room, wherever you are when you wrote it or typed it, and going somewhere that feels a little less threatening, a little more light, such as outside, or going on a walk through some woods and trees, whatever you like. Maybe you have a beach nearby. Go to the beach. Or maybe you just go to a different room in your apartment or home and you sit down, take a few deep breaths. Maybe you get something to eat. Maybe you play with your dog for a few moments, or hamster, whatever you have. And take time to just disconnect from that experience. Now, some people take the letters and they'll bring it to therapy to process it and talk about it, or they do what's called the empty chair technique, and that involves literally visualizing the person sitting in the chair across from you and you reading out exactly what you wrote, and you get to say it without being interrupted, without being challenged, without being threatened. You get to fully unpack it. For some people, they opt out of saying it and they feel like they don't really need that, and that's okay too. Maybe for them, they would rather burn it. Some people just throw it away or shred it. Some people pack it away and give it to a safe person that can dispose of it for them. Whatever feels right for you. And I would be completely amiss if I did not also recognize that part of healing can also include spirituality. I've said this before and I'll say it again. God can handle your pain and your hurt. He can also handle your anger. Telling God, just as you would tell anyone else how you feel, how it hurt you, if you felt abandoned, if you felt rejected, if it made you question Him, if it made you question your own life, whatever came up, have that courageous conversation with Him too. Or if there's other ways that you express your spirituality, I recognize God because for me, I come from a Christian perspective. For you, incorporating your spirituality and how you heal might look different. Maybe for you it looks like connecting with nature. Maybe for you it looks like other types of prayers and meditations. Maybe it looks like for you being a part of a particular small group or support system that shares the same values and beliefs as you. That is all a part of the healing as well. There's also holistic and alternative medicines and therapies. Some people don't like therapy. I get it. And that's okay. An alternative to that could be, for example, acupuncture. So I just learned about 5-point acupuncture. And it involves your ear, which can sound pretty scary, but I can tell you guys, it's actually very healing, very alleviating, and it also has so many benefits on our mental health. It allows you to disconnect. Most people end up falling asleep after 5-point acupuncture. And a lot of people that I've recommended to do it, they came back and said that they felt like complete lightness. They felt like a cloud. They felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off their shoulders. Some people have reported and said to me that they felt as though they didn't feel stressed anymore, and the things that typically ticked them off wasn't ticking them off anymore. There's also aromatherapy for those of us who do not like needles. Aromatherapy can be very comforting, very healing. It provides you with the opportunity to connect with scents and smells and engage your sensory system in something that allows you to feel peace and safety. If there's a certain smell that brings you comfort and brings back happy memories, that is all part of the healing. You can incorporate aromatherapy whether by yourself or actually going to someone who provides those services. You can also even do it with like massage. A lot of times there's that option to add aromatherapy to your massage. I would opt to try it, and picking a scent that feels peaceful, comforting, calm, safe, loving, nurturing, whatever fills the void of what you feel like you need. Maybe that void is that you want something that's going to allow you to feel comforted or held. Pick a scent, a smell that makes you feel that way. And of course, there's going to be some trial and error. You have to test them out. Another thing that I like when it comes to healing is maybe your healing looks like doing animal therapy. I have a friend that does animal therapy for survivors of trauma and sexual assault, and the benefits are outrageous, especially with like equine therapy, which in other words is basically therapy with horses. Being able to give yourself an opportunity to groom and feed and just engage with an animal can decompress you completely, but it also give you an opportunity to connect with feelings of vulnerability, feelings of what nurturing you did not get, and acknowledging that and being able to gift that back. It can also give you, if your pain, trauma, hurt, whatever you felt, left you feeling out of control, animal therapy gives you an opportunity to have control again. A lot of times in equine therapy with horses or equestrian therapy, you have an opportunity to train and lead the horse, which takes some work, but it also gives you this sense of control that may have been taken away from you, and whatever experience left you feeling broken, hurt, traumatized, and betrayed. Maybe animals aren't your thing. That's also okay. Something that's pretty new that I came across is flotation therapy. I personally haven't tried it. I really want to, and I would love if you guys gave it a try too and tell me about it. Or if I beat you to it, I'll mention it next time. So with flotation therapy, it provides you with a restricted and controlled environment that again gives you a sense of safety and security. it allows you to kind of sit with calmness in the silence and actually hearing your mind. Sometimes we run away from silence because we don't like having to sit with our thoughts. And part of healing is actually confrontation and acknowledgement of pain. And so maybe you need that. And flotation therapy is a way to do that. And the water is created in such a way, like you're in this kind of like little tank, and the water with the mixtures that they use allow you to float, and you float effortlessly, and you can allow yourself to just be present with the here and now moment of what you're feeling, the feeling of the water over your body and around your face, and completely embracing that moment. Sometimes float therapy gets combined with some sounds. In general, music therapy can also be helpful too. Music in general outside of therapy can be so healing because it sometimes validates. So a lot of times in different cultures and cultural groups, we talk about how music is our way of expressing the pain that we had to go through and overcome, whether in a particular race or with a particular age group, demographic, whatever it might be. It gives you an opportunity to express yourself. And that is one of the first things that I mentioned is important, is expression. Whether you're making music or you're listening to music that resonates and exemplifies how you feel, give yourself that freedom to fully embrace and sit with whatever is coming up. Maybe you cry, maybe you just start singing along and you feel yourself being lifted. Maybe it brings up some unsettling and comforting or painful memories. Part of the processing of that healing is acknowledging them as they come up, allowing them to be there. Don't focus on trying to get it to go away. Allow it to just be there. And hand in hand with being in the moment can also include what I would say, a huge part of healing, and that's self-care and restorative activities. So when it comes to self-care and restorative activities, there's different categories. Of course, there's the physical, such as making sure your basic needs are there, eating healthy, giving yourself space to take time off as needed. Maybe you like bubble baths, or maybe you need hugs from people that you love. Maybe you need to take a walk or exercise. And I also like encouraging people when it comes to having physical self-care. It's turning off your phone, putting it on do not disturb, and giving yourself me time. There's also psychological self-care, which can include the self-reflection or therapy, journaling and practicing self-awareness, aromatherapy, and all the other therapies I mentioned. Or maybe it involves you taking some time to read a self-help book. Maybe you don't want or don't feel ready for group therapy, but you're okay with joining a small support group, whether at your church or among your friends. Practicing asking and receiving help is another form of psychological self-care. There's also emotional self-care, which includes affirmations. This is where I do want to encourage you to love on yourself, show yourself compassion, validate yourself and your emotions, laugh, make time for joy, make time for all of the emotions that come up, including the ones that don't feel comfy, like sadness or anger. Allow yourself to be present with those. Tell yourself it's okay. There's spiritual self-care, which I alluded to when I talked about spirituality. That can look like whatever religious practices you believe in and practice. It can also look like doing meditation or singing or dancing or giving yourself opportunities to be inspired by others, whether it's through a podcast or maybe you're listening to a particular song or a particular sermon. Doing yoga can also incorporate spirituality, being in the ocean or being around water and nature, giving yourself opportunities to participate in things that pour into your personal and important values and morals. That all can be connected with your spirituality and how you define and find spiritual community and healing. And personal self-care, of course, this can be difficult because it requires you to take some time to learn who you are. And that's a huge part of healing, because sometimes we lose a sense of who we are after there's been a huge trauma, pain, hurt, betrayal, or disappointment. Fill in the blank of what caused you any type of hurt or distress. Identities sometimes get lost after that. So personal self-care is exploring, who do you want to be? Who do you feel you are right now? And how do you want to define or redefine yourself, reinventing yourself? Making plans, short-term and long-term goals, thinking about what you look forward to, whether that's creating a vision board or creating a actual plan for your next 5 years. Or maybe that feels too big. Maybe you just want to focus on this year. Go out, be around family, friends that feel safe, validating and supportive, or just relax. And of course, last but certainly not least, we have to be realistic and think about, how do we deal with self-care when it comes to our own professional life? Realistically, yes, we need to heal, and we also need time to heal in a way that allows us to still meet the needs and expectations and requirements around us. So with professional self-care, of course, if you need to take time off from work, do that. But if you can't do that, carve out time in your day to truly disconnect and decompress. That might look like actually taking your lunch break instead of working through it. It may look like setting boundaries and saying, no, I cannot do that extra assignment. Maybe it looks like you not working so much overtime and taking a moment to decline that overtime offer and actually taking that day to do something fun. Maybe self-care for you when it comes to your professional health and wellness looks like taking one break in between each task. So sometimes I tell people, when you're working on something, doing 30 minutes or 20 minutes of work, after that time frame is up, physically getting up and moving away from your desk or wherever you are and taking a break for at least 5 minutes, and then coming back to whatever the task is and resuming your work for another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever time frame, and then taking a break again, repeating that as time and space and scheduling allows. Planning out your career might be a step for you when it comes to your professional self-care. Think about what it is that you actually want to do and feel called to do. And of course, learning how to say no when you don't want to do something, or when something is actually not in your job description. Take your sick days, use your vacation time, and give yourself the grace to step away as needed. These are all different ways that we can pour back into ourselves that gives us an opportunity for empowerment, healing, rejuvenation, and recovery, in addition to being productive. And just alongside that, a next part, as you're in your healing journey, this might change or move, is deciding how you want to proceed in life. What do you want to plan for your future? After you've done all the acknowledgments and the validating and expressing, and you've chosen what therapeutic steps or alternative therapeutic steps you wanted to take, and whatever steps you use to allow yourself to release the emotion, express yourself, whether through music or aromatherapy or exercise or whatever courageous conversations you need to have. After you've done that and you have a self-care regimen or restorative activity regimen, decide how you want to live your life moving forward. Have things that you look forward to. Do some future planning. Schedule some vacations. Schedule some trips. Schedule some opportunities to do personal development. Define or redefine what hope looks like for you. What do you hope for? Write it down. Have it somewhere physically, visibly available to you that can remind you of what you are still living the next day for. Have things that you're looking forward to and having the opportunity to take control of your narrative. Maybe the trauma, the pain, the hurt, the betrayal, the disappointment rewrote a part of your narrative and story, the life story that you're living in a way that you don't like. It's okay to say, no, I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to take back control over my narrative, my life story. And it starts with thinking about how you want to move forward from this day on. Looking ahead and not allowing the chains of the past and behind you to hold you and restrict you from continuing to live your life free and healing. Here is where I actually wanted to plug in self-love. I know we started this whole month with being selfless and correcting sometimes how we overly love ourselves to the point where it's actually painful to others or invalidating of others or leaves us isolated. Here is where self-love plays a role, because we need to show ourselves compassion, gentleness, validation, and also being real with you. If you can't be real with you, how are you going to be real with anyone else? Be compassionate with yourself, whether it's taking extra time to do self-care or maybe looking in the mirror and tooting your own horn a bit, stating some affirmations that empower you and uplift you. Being gentle with yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you don't have the capacity to do all of the things or be everywhere at once. It's okay to say, you know what? I can't do that today. I don't have any more energy for this. You can't pour out into other people or other situations or even your responsibilities if you're already empty. So be gentle with yourself. Love on yourself. And I will leave you guys right there with that. The encouragement and the freedom to love yourself in a healthy way. And that starts with healing. I hope that these different ideas that I've shared become tools in your toolkit in your journey of healing from how love and relationships have hurt you in the past, but being able to kind of have a little bit more clarity on how you can answer that question of healing. It starts, number one, with you. It starts with you recognizing that you're the expert of yourself, but also that you have choices. You can choose what you want for yourself moving forward. You can choose what doesn't and doesn't work for you. But regardless of what you choose, be consistent. Give it time to work, even if it feels uncomfortable and frustrating. Sit with the tension and the resistance sometimes of wanting to change but not wanting to change, because that is being real with yourself. Sometimes healing doesn't feel great because we have to sit with the uncomfortableness of it. I want to challenge you to give yourself some time to sit with it, confront it, acknowledge it, validate it, call a thing, and express whatever it is that you've been holding in so that you can make those next steps forward and truly love yourself in a way that is healthy, and truly love others in a way that is healthy but not punishing them for the pain of love and relationships of your past. You can redefine what love means. You can do that. And I encourage you to do that by starting with your own healing. And if nothing else, I hope that you take heart this message and also have the courage and the bravery to start your healing journey if you haven't, and the courage and empowerment and motivation to keep going on your healing journey if you're already there. And if nothing else, remember, faith helps.